It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Welcome to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. A great show for you today. This show is going to be very inspiring, and I just want you to listen to what's going to be said today. It's about our culture that we live in, and we very seldom hear about what's actually going on. A good friend of mine who's been on the show a number of times, Father Peter O'Rourke's here, and we discussed this particular thing about the culture that we live in today and where this culture has led us. Father, thanks for coming on the Sam Lesante Show. I'm just going to sort of like turn the show over to you, Father, and maybe you could, I'm anxious to hear what you have to say.
Okay, well, thank you, Sam, and it's great to be here again with you. And I think it's very important that we talk about the culture that we live in, because many of us don't realize, the culture that we live in and the environment which surrounds us. It's obvious that we live in a multicultural society that has divided our country. We experience every day political hate, intolerance, which propagates violence and disrespect for the dignity of human life. If it feels good, do it. That's your opinion, and this is mine. I don't want to impose my beliefs on others. What's true for one person may not be for others. That is relativism. Truth. What is truth? Pontius Pilate asked Jesus over 2,000 years ago, is objective truth to be found regarding the most important things in life, or are we just left with our own opinions? Great question. That was asked by Chris Stefanik, who authored the pamphlet Absolute Relativism. Can we know for certain why we exist? If life has any purpose? And what happens when we die? Can we know how we are supposed to live, and if in fact there really is a God? And does claiming to know the truth about these things make someone intolerant? Chris asked that again in his pamphlet. Webster defines truth as the property of being in accord with fact or reality concerning the most important questions of faith, morals, and the meaning of life. That's relativism. Relativism is the idea that there is no universal truth, but that truth differs from person to person and culture to culture. That's the culture in which we live today, and many of us don't realize that. Relativism is the idea, as I said, there is no universal truth. Relativism is a self-contradicting proposition, and here's why. The dogma of relativism is that it is absolutely true for everyone, that nothing is absolutely true for everyone. That's an oxymoron. It's an oxymoron. Relativism is a flawed philosophy. Relativism leaves us with no criterion for moral decision-making but personal taste and opinion. Because it is impossible for relativism to be consistent, many people end up being selective relativists. Terrorism, gun control, climate change, open borders, and so on and so on. But nothing else about sexual abuse, sexual ethics, forced education regarding gender change, abortion, and religion. Relativism deprives children of formation, Moral and ethical relativism propagates especially to children entering puberty and promotes an ideal of egoism and narcissism, excessive interest in oneself, selfishness, entitlement, lack of empathy, and self-centeredness. Relativism diametrically opposes the virtue of humility and attentiveness to the humble. Humility is a virtue which we hear little today because it is so much at odds with our culture. Self-determination, human ambition, anger, aggression, and yes, violence. However vaguely or confusedly understood, the truth is clear. For Christians, Jesus clearly teaches that humility calls us to turn over our lives to God and recognize that all we are and all we do derives ultimately from Him. Though He was in the form of God, Jesus did not deem equality with God something to be grasped at. Rather, He emptied Himself and took the form of a slave. Being born in the likeness of men, He humbled Himself, obediently accepting death on a cross. Philippians 2:6-11. We really need to take a hard look at the public life of Jesus and His teaching. The virtue of humility has nothing to do with being shy, timid, or mediocre. Humility causes us to be fully aware of the talents the Lord has given us, and without losing a right intention, want to make them faithful and fruitful in our lives. If Jesus walked the earth today, He would stand strongly against the disordered moral state in which our society finds itself, moral and ethical relativism. Speaking about the grave evils of our time, sexual abuse of minors by clergy, yes, marketing of child pornography, and the destruction of traditional family values, human trafficking, the deadly abuse of drugs entering our country without any attempt to halt them, and the disregard of the dignity of the innocent human life through procured abortion and euthanasia. Some believers may still go through the motions of religious practice, but some do not attempt to understand and conform to a divine being who exists beyond himself. Today, a once respected medical university is offering identity change for children as young as 3 years old. While relativism, allowing oneself to be tossed here and there, is extolled, while those of us who live according to a clear faith based on the creed of the church are viewed as extremists. When people don't think their rights are based on objective principles, objective truth, they come to see their rights as favors and entitlements granted by political power. Consider the woke ideology that's being introduced into public education today. In December 1993, at World Youth Day, St. John Paul II clearly warned of moral relativism and the woke education, the ideology. This is what he said: to educate without a value system based on objective truth is to abandon young people to moral confusion, personal insecurity, and easy manipulation. False teachers, many belonging to the worlds of science, culture, and the media, present an anti-gospel. They advocate an approach to life that has led millions of young people into a sad loneliness in which they are deprived of reasons for hope and are incapable of real love. The golden rule of moral and ethical relativism is not to do the right thing, but to do as you will. Ethical relativism teaches young people to reject objective truth, and that they can discover who he or she really is by freeing themselves from the molds of their parents, society, religion, and even of his or her own body. Relativism makes it easy for those in authority to manipulate others. Take a hard look at the life and teaching of Jesus Christ. The virtue of humility has nothing to do with being shy, timid, or especially mediocrity. Relativism lulls one into a comfort zone. Yes, out of sight, out of mind. It produces a society of do-nothings in the face of moral evils. All that is necessary for evil to prevail is for good people to do nothing.
I'm going to take a short break. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Once again, thank you so much for making the Sam Lesante Show the #1 talk show in Northeastern Pennsylvania. Our polling with Susquehanna Polling and Research, one of the leading polling companies, pollsters in the country. They're on basic television every week. Did an extensive polling, and our programming is #1 in local neighborhood shows. 24/7, ssptv.com, or our YouTube channel. My guest today is Father Peter O'Rourke, no stranger. If you're just tuning in, I highly recommend that you either go to our YouTube channel or our website and watch this show. Of course, it's on a number of times. Father's talking about the culture that we live in today. You know, it's interesting. When I travel around the area in Freeland and Hazleton and West Hazleton, I see so many churches that were closed, you know.
Yes.
And one time, as I go, I reminisce, you know, going up to St. Stanislaus and coming down Wyoming Street or Laurel Street, and you see the churches. At one time, I envision all the people that used to go to church and worship, and not only Catholic, but Protestants and Jewish. I was talking to my Jewish friend when he was here a while ago, and I said, "How are the synagogues?" He says, "Sammy, they're half empty." You know, it seems that everybody, I don't know, are busy in life. I was talking about St. Luke mentions the ascension of Jesus, and he said that he's coming back. But when he comes back, will he find any faith?
Absolutely. He will find faith. If we go back to the Old Testament, and we relate to 3 men visiting Abraham, right? And of course, Abraham welcomes them. His hospitality is exceptional. He welcomes them and feeds them. And afterwards, the 3 men are now heading towards Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham, asked them, "Why are you heading there?" And they said they were going because the culture had become so violent that they were going to destroy both cities. And Abraham asked at that point, "Well, sirs, if there are 50 good people there, will you destroy it?" "No." And he goes all the way down to, "If there's only 1 there, would you destroy it?" So the answer to your question is, right, yes, Jesus will find faith. He definitely will.
I interviewed Father Raymond many years ago, and I don't know. You remember Father Raymond?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
Father Raymond was I was an altar. His first Mass, I was his altar boy, and we were talking about the Mass, and he said, "Sammy," he said, "I would crawl on my hands and knees if I had to go to the Mass." And we as Catholics take this so I mean, it's like nothing, But here's a priest. There has to be a reason for that. Why would you want to crawl on your hands and knees to go to Mass?
The celebration of the Holy Eucharist, right, is food for the journey. You know, the Catholic faith, we have 7 sacraments that really root the Catholic faith. And through all the sacraments, we receive grace. Jesus instituted all of the sacraments, right, in order to give us grace so that we're able to live this pilgrim journey that we're on and to be able to attain salvation and life after death. So, I mean, it's the center, it's the source and the center of our Catholic faith, right? All things are possible for God. All things. I think people who believe in God would not dissent upon that. All things are possible for God. And when Jesus left this sacrament of himself, okay, Jesus is the source of all grace and through all of the sacraments. Therefore, Jesus is grace himself.
You would think that with that being said, that the churches would be jammed, okay, with Catholics. You would think that people who are finding excuses, either going golfing or watching a game or whatever, and they put their religion aside, they put God aside. And we were talking about people, contributing in church, and I remember a saying. He says, "You stop giving to God when He stops giving to you." It's funny, Father, when people who don't go to church or don't practice their religion, when something happens in their family, if God forbid their wife, their kids, their children, or whatever, you hear this: pray for them. Pray for them. How many times you hear that a week? Father, my sister, pray for them. Now, I don't say to them, well, do you go to church? Do you pray? Whether you're Catholic, Protestant, or Jewish, or whatever, do you do that? That's interesting, isn't it?
Well, it is interesting. And the most interesting thing is, why are we there? What is it that draws us into that? And it's exactly moral and ethical relativism, right? That we can excuse anything that we want to do, excuse it, and not have our consciences, feel guilty about it. That's moral and ethical relativism.
How about the schools today? How about the colleges today? I wonder how many of us really know what's being taught. We have colleges there are many teachers who are extremely liberal. We have colleges that have teachers who are atheists. We have high schools, okay, and we're sending our kids, okay, do we know whether it's right or wrong? Do we know what's being taught? When we're watching even Hallmark movies today, my wife and I watch a lot of movies, okay, and I see everything. Sometimes they slip in, not sometimes, now all the time, they're slipping in things that really don't fit into what our religion is. I mean, but however, those people, if you say something, then you're becoming racist. If you make comments, then you don't like these kind of, I mean, you're caught in between. You don't want to offend anybody, so what do?
Well, first of all, I would say this. This relativism did not just happen overnight, okay? It formally began really about 60 years ago. We had several things occurring at the same time. We had the close of the Second Vatican Council. We had a police action in Vietnam that was very, very intolerant here. And we changed our educational system at that particular point. We went from a character-based education to a values classification. I experienced that with my own children. They would come home, well, we don't have to believe that, it's only a story.
Yeah.
Right? That's exactly what we were getting. Even in Catholic schools that was being taught. So that slope was being glazed to the point that this is where we're at now. And what you see, right, what we get is the propagation of this ethical and moral relativism through the media, especially through the media. What we're seeing, I mean, that comes out of Hollywood, right? And very little of what would really support our beliefs.
Folks, I'm talking to Father Peter O'Rourke. You know, he was married before, and he actually mentioned about children, and it's interesting. We were talking about that before the show. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Thanks once again for making us the #1 talk show in northeastern Pennsylvania. I appreciate that very much. If you're just tuning in, I highly recommend that you go to our YouTube channel, our web channel, and our website, and look at this show I'm doing with Father Peter O'Rourke. We talk about the culture we live in today and interesting things, just to educate us, just to educate. And talking about education, you mentioned about how they're slipping things in and how gullible sometimes we are. I'm one of them, okay? Hollywood, has destroyed the family, is destroying the family unit. I applaud, when I see in our church at St. John Bosco, and when I'm visiting, and when I see young couple coming in with their children, it makes me feel good to see that they're bringing their children in, whether they're, teens or 3, 4, 5, especially teenagers. And every Sunday or Saturday when I go, I see these people coming in with their children, and I think that's so great.
Well, it is. Certainly it's so great to see them bringing their children in. You see, they're the ones that need to be supported at this particular time in our country, because the traditional family has been attacked so violently, that they're trying to hold on to those values. They're the ones that need to really have the support of the parish, right? That they may be able to bring their children up in a sense that they begin to understand who they are, really, right? To be able to understand the culture that we do live in, and especially the environment that we live in our own neighborhoods. So important for us to really support that traditional style of family.
You mentioned before, you were married before, and
Yes.
you have children, grandchildren too, right? Yeah. So you got the both sides going here, as a Catholic priest, and do you feel that is? Now listen, you don't have to have the illness to cure the illness. So there are so many priests out there that are giving, and ministers and rabbis giving great advice. They don't have to be in the situation, but it's been interesting how that works.
Well, if we really look at our faith, St. Paul tells us that each of us have our own charisms, and we're called by the Lord in order to be able to minister to the people, each one with his own charism. So yes, my charism, I feel, is steeped in what I preach. I look at the environment, what is going on, what's going on in our neighborhoods and our parishes, and I speak, to that, and I speak very openly about what's going on and what the church teaches.
It's a challenge, I'll tell you. Nobody has a monopoly on ideas, and we all try to get along with each other, especially during political times. I have my beliefs, you have your beliefs. That doesn't mean that you and I can't get along. That doesn't mean that we can't discuss being human. Some people take it to the point, he's for this, I'm not talking to them. And some people don't even say talk to me because I'm pro-life, okay? And Catholics on top of it. So that's not the way it should be, I don't think.
See, because we can express our beliefs, right, and are attacked for those beliefs, really is intolerance on the part of those who say we are intolerant.
Yeah.
When you really look at it, that attack upon us really is intolerance. And I mean, it's just there if we understand it and we see it.
First of all, I pray for priests. I pray for anyone in the clergy today, ministers, rabbis. It's a tough task, and I think sometimes some priests get bad raps, especially when you're a Catholic priest and you have that small percentage that fall on the wayside, and all of a sudden that becomes major news that all priests are that way, or all ministers and rabbis. I pray for you guys, I really do.
Well, thank you, because we really need that prayers. But we need to pray for all our Christian denominations, and also, our Orthodox Jewish friends.
Yes.
We need to pray for those who are really, really spreading the truth, right, in order for our people to really come to understand the culture that we do live in.
Well, remember, some people think they're going to live forever. So people think they're going to live forever.
Well,
and when they get closer, sick, and then all of a sudden, God comes into the picture. But right now, they're healthy, they've got SUVs, they're making some money, and who needs God? Who needs to go to church, right?
Exactly.
Until, as Bishop Timothy said, till you hit that bump in the road, and all of a sudden, reality sets in. Thanks for coming on the show,
you're
Father.
very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Remember, folks, if you haven't seen this show, it's a great show. It's something just to think about, not lecturing or preaching anybody. Let's try to get along with people. Let's try to agree to disagree and pray for the clergy. They need it. We'll see you next time.